Thanks, Bruce, for being here. So I think this is a great program and the timing's great. I was up late last night working on my budget for 2021 and starting to think about planning for 2021. And indeed, this is a time of challenge and hopefully of opportunity as we close out 2020 and start thinking about 2021. So we've got a great panel with us. We've got Randy Scritchfield is going to be our MC and kind of kick us off and keep us on track. Shay Thomson is with us, as well as Bryan Beamer. They will introduce themselves and we'll kick it off. And we have time for Q&A. We will do Q&A if we want to let the speakers go through their program first. So if questions arise, feel free to put them in the chat or save them to the Q&A session. Please, everyone, put yourselves on mute if you're not speaking. And then also we are recording. Laura, we are recording. We want to make sure everybody knows that we're recording, just as a courtesy to you all. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Randy and put myself on mute.
Thank you, Marilyn. Yeah, I'll do some brief introductions for each of us. I'm Randy Scritchfield, as Marilyn noted. I'm a past chair of the Chamber, current chair of the Legislative Committee, and I'm a certified financial planner myself, having worked with clients for over 40 years. We have two great individuals with us today, two very talented and much younger than me engaged individuals, and I'm happy to have them both with us. Bryan Beamer is the founder and senior financial planner for iPlan and TSP Advisory Group. Most of you may know that TSP is basically the 401k version for federal employees. And you're not a financial planner in this area unless you're working with federal employees. Bryan works with federal employees, but also small business owners and individuals. He's been helping clients plan their future for over 16 years. Shay Thomson is with Edward Jones, and she provides a special personalized touch to those that she works with. She spent over 20 years in mid-sized to Fortune 500 companies helping them plan their futures, and she decided to leverage that experience and passion for planning by helping individuals in her community in a more direct way. And that's why she joined Edward Jones and is doing what she's doing. Bryan and Shay both have different backgrounds, as we all do, but one thing they have in common is the importance of planning. In medicine, it's malpractice to prescribe a drug or a treatment without first doing the proper diagnosis. So you will find in their presentations, they're going to try to speak to the importance of doing planning, ideally with another individual. We want this to be as interactive as possible, as Marilyn noted, so even though we're going to get through the presentations, please throw your questions in chat while you're thinking of them. So with that, we will get started with Shay.
All right.
Go ahead, Shay.
Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank Marilyn and Laura for reaching out to invite me to be part of this discussion. It is an opportunity or a topic that I think is critically important, and excited to be able to be part of it. So, you know, the headline to this was, you know, challenge and opportunity. Where do we go from here as we think about Q4, as we think about going into 2021? And, you know, if I reflect on the past 6 months, which I think a lot of us are doing right now, it has been very focused on the challenges. You know, professionally, our businesses, our personal lives, are just everything got disrupted in a way that nobody could have ever predicted. And, you know, I think that process that we have all been moving through has been just that, a process. You know, I think about how I used to feel about all of this in March and April is very different than how I feel now. And if you think about the impact to our businesses, certainly some industries are recovering a little bit faster than others. Some, you know, are still lagging behind based on the nature of their business. And as I think I said to my kids pretty early on when they were really frustrated by all this, I was like, we have to do things differently. And, you know, that sort of saying of adversity brings innovation. And that, I think we're seeing that in businesses. We're able to do sort of, right, go about our life. If you think about the number of cars that are out and about in Montgomery County now is very different. You know, when I drove to the office today, it felt kind of normal. When I did that back in April, it was weird, really weird. And so I think just knowing that progress is happening is important. But there has been a lot of uncertainty, and there still is. And particularly, you know, I know this topic was around finances, and, you know, certainly the three of us can speak to kind of what the market is doing if you have questions about that, but that's not really what I wanted to focus on. What I thought was important was about perspective. And, you know, the conversations I've been having over the last couple of months have been very much about keeping perspective. You know, early months, nobody knows what's happening. The stock market's plummeting. The news media's big, loud words about plummet and worst ever and since the Depression, and you name it, it's out there. And the one thing that I always like to remind people is the job of the news media is to make their advertisers happy. And I used to work in the media industry, so I know this for a fact. It's about eyeballs and ears. And so they're going to do the headlines and the commentary that is going to drive emotion. Sometimes that's euphoria, best ever, best month ever, best this, best that. Sometimes it's below. And so when clients, I'm talking to them, well, what do I do? Well, it's that somewhat annoying answer of, well, it depends. Depends on you. And so the quick visual I wanted to share was just about demonstrating perspective in the context of kind of finance in the investing world. Is everybody seeing, it says short-term perspective on top?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Just want to make sure that the share went through. So this chart is the monthly returns of the S&P 500 since 1926. So up, down, up, down, up, 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 down, up, right? So if we all live and focus in that, that's a very emotionally triggered way to look at how the financial world is moving. And then what that impact is to us as individuals and to our own plan. And that's why, you know, I'm sure Randy and Bryan feel the same way. That's why we try to keep you focused here. So this is the long-term view. You know, this is the old forest through the trees adage. You know, right now over the last 6 months, we've all been in the forest. I mean, in the trees, right? Things have been in our face. What's changing? What's different? But what we need to do, and what the advice I give in the conversations I've been having, is let's take a step back, and then what does it mean for you? And I think that, to me, is really where the opportunity lies right now, is this pivot point as we go into Q4 and into 2021 planning, is what's different for you now? What has this uncovered? What I've found in the conversations and working with business owners and with individuals is perspective has changed. How they feel about their family, what they want for their future. If they've suffered a loss of a family member, it's changed their perspective. And as a business owner, you know, I know some great business people who have tremendous sort of what if plans. I'm pretty sure worldwide shutdown and pandemic were not on anybody's plan, right? But now we've all lived through this. So now we know what that impact can be. And what I really wanted to reinforce is how important it is to articulate those goals. And I'm actually going to share another thing quickly here. So this is just our document for kind of the process. I will tell you right now, this is not unique. If anyone who does what we do, Randy and Bryan and I, are good at what they do, they're following some version of this process. And this is about conversation of where are you now, where do you want to be, and what are the things you need to be articulating and creating a strategy around. So as Randy said, the plan. We like to plan both for what the opportunities are and where the risks are. And this past 6 months has uncovered a lot of that for a lot of people. So taking an opportunity now, while we're not so mired in the emotion of what we were all in back in the early spring, to take stock of where you are. Pull your information together. If you don't have a team of professionals, find them. We have great resources in the chamber of those resources. Find an accountant that can help you. Find a business attorney or an estate attorney, financial planner, somebody who can help you put this into place. And be honest with them. What got uncovered over the last 6 months? I was taking on way more risk than I realized, and I freaked out in March, right? I couldn't stomach what I was seeing on my portfolio. Okay, well, there's an assessment and change that might need to happen to make that better aligned to you. Or I lost my best person. He had to move, or God forbid someone passed away. Like, as a business owner, what are those things? And then, as I said to Randy and Brian when we were talking previous to this, one of the things that I hear often that unnerves me is the comment of, well, my business is my retirement plan. And it absolutely should be a big part of your retirement plan. But as we saw recently, there are things that are out of our control. And if everything is geared to just that one solution, there's a lot of risk involved in that. And part of what we try to do in the conversations we have with clients, Brian and Randy too, is how do we pull that apart? How do we strategically make that part of your plan, but not your whole plan? So that what you want for your family, what you want for what comes next comes into play. And things like insurance solutions. There are solutions. We have our toolboxes behind us to help solve those problems or to put the things in place that can do that. But it needs to be a conversation. And as I say to some of my clients, I don't allow ostriches in my office. Like, nobody gets to put their head in the sand and pretend like the bad news doesn't exist. It might be, and sometimes those are uncomfortable conversations because where you are right now isn't where you want to be. And that's okay. By taking the time to have the conversation is where you uncover the opportunity and you don't stay stuck in the challenge. And so my message today is really pretty simple, and is not so much about what the market's doing or not. There's a ton of things coming up that we have no control over that are going to drive uncertainty, the election. Markets are going to get more volatile because of that. But at the end of the day, it really, over what we know historically, is it doesn't really matter. And we can talk more about that if you want. The virus, we still don't know when we're going to have a vaccine, when we're going to have treatments. Are we going to have a relapse in cases in the fall? Like, there's a lot of uncertainties. So again, I really think it's important to focus on the things you can control and where are those opportunities within that, versus trying to, sort of get too influenced by the noise around us and staying focused on the past and the challenges that have come up. So I will turn it over to Brian, who I know has some great tactical advice for business owners and individuals, and then we'll do a Q&A later.
Thank you, Shay. I was going to interject something before Brian took over. On speaking of the perspective, long-term and short-term in that piece you had, I like to use a quote from David Gergen, and he compares politics to the stock market. And he says politics, particularly in an election year, the short term is very clear, but the long term is murky. But in the stock market, it's the opposite. The short term is very murky, but the long term is very clear. It's a different version of that, is saying, I don't know where the next 20% move in the market will be, whether we be 20% down or 20% up, but I know where the next 100% move will be, and that'll be up. So just keeping that long-term perspective. We're really, we're not money managers, we're behavior managers, helping people keep things in perspective. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Brian.
I appreciate that. Absolutely, I agree with your comments there. A lot of times we try not to akin ourselves to being psychologists, but you can imagine trying to calm down an investor during a pandemic like this back in March, trying to just relax and calm your clients and letting them know staying the course is more important, and staying focused on your plan is more important than trying to time the market. which is something that I highly advise against, is trying to time the market. But having said that, just pivoting off of what Shay has stated, just yesterday I received an email from another advisor that I work alongside, where they just sent me an email. I can read it, no, well, not verbatim, but just point out they were hoping that will be able to share some of my thoughts because of the fact that they have a client that is looking to invest in the market, has some cash in there. However, they're concerned, the advisors are concerned, she just doesn't know where to place it because of the volatility. And that speaks a lot to what Shay was emphasizing in terms of right now we are in a pandemic, and looking at the short term, it's harder to tell which direction the market would go to. As a matter of fact, and Shay Shay can probably attest to this, and is that we use what's called leading indicators to try to help us understand what direction the market is going to go to. But with so much volatility that we've been experiencing, whether that be geopolitical, just looking at the relationships between right now the different countries, China and US, it's really hard to tell which direction that the overall market is going to go to because of that. And so when you start to really dumb this down to the level where businesses need to start preparing for the fourth quarter, one of the things that I started working with my small business owners is really trying to understand what is the consumer doing. And so I did some extensive research, and this was way before before Laura reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to sit on this panel. I was doing research regarding found a very interesting study that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce actually worked in concert with Visa. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, more Americans are shopping online. And for obvious reasons, it's because of the fact of the pandemic COVID-19. But a recent survey that was conducted by the credit issuer Visa reported that 49% of consumers are now buying online of those that were studied. The study also found that only about a quarter of those shoppers are actually going out to support local businesses. That disturbed me because, of course, me being a small business owner, of course, I want the foot traffic. But that also means that 75% of those that were surveyed stated that they will shop online. So that is a frightening point when you start to think about I see that I hope my internet is not breaking up. But that is a frightening point.
It's getting a little sporadic at times, Brian. I don't know if you can remedy it in any way. Maybe even getting closer to the mic might help the quality. But it has been a little problematic. We'll see what happens.
Okay, but what I found in that study is that I was looking at the reasons small business owners gave to avoid becoming a larger online presence, and three things popped out to me. According to that study, 32% of small business owners did not want to spend money on data privacy. Another 31% of small business owners felt that online marketing was less personal than actually talking to a client or customer face-to-face. And 28% of those that were surveyed felt that increasing their digital infrastructure costs was too much of a risk amid a pandemic. But what's funny is that study after study showed that an increase in online presence actually connected that business more with the customer because the relationship went beyond the brick and mortar. So consumers are not just looking for products and services anymore. They're looking for which is nothing but a learning adventure that can keep their attention. And that right there is where small business owners have to adapt. If you're not looking at, or at least considering, automation and improved marketing, you may get left behind. So when we are talking with some of our small business owner clients, we're asking them to use online tools like the likes of Facebook, Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, and many others, because of the fact that the opportunity that small business owners have to keep up with larger businesses is actually strikes quite strong. Especially being that small business owners have greater flexibility and efficiency, albeit on a smaller scale initially due to limited resources, you still have those capabilities. So as a planner, I'm constantly asked by my small business owner clients, what actionable steps can they take to consider, or what should they consider heading into the fourth quarter? And having said that, ignoring the route of reducing your staff size, which I know that's probably the first thing that a lot of small business owners are looking at in order to survive, I'm going to try to list 10 things that hopefully will be able to give you a little bit more insight on what you can possibly do heading into the fourth quarter that might be able to boost your visibility and your exposure to your consumer. Having said that, I'm going to try to share this screen right here, and please let me know if you're able to see this.
We can see it, Bryan.
Okay, perfect.
We got it.
So I'm going to look at this and break this down in two parts. The first part is going to be trimming the fat. And what do I mean by that? Reframe the way that you guys are thinking about investing in your business. The pandemic actually has owners, working harder with fewer resources, and we totally understand that. And when you talk to owners, 44% of them think that their changes that they've made to their business due to COVID will be permanent. Things like remote work, changing supply chains, or greater dependence on online stores and virtual services, it really could remain part of your long-term plans after the pandemic. Over 1 in 10 surveyed, or 13%, said that they're relying on technology to run parts of their businesses. This includes spending a lot of time in different apps and software. For some, that could be upgrading your website or even increasing ad expenses. The second point I want to talk about is reviewing your app or subscription spending. Reviewing and reducing your monthly subscription fees could actually save you guys hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per year. Take a hard look at what you need versus actually what you want. You might find stark differences in between those two. For other businesses where you have a lot of debt because you're building your inventory, or you have expenses that you have to pay, start looking at applying for a balance card transfer, meaning transferring to a lower interest credit card versus retaining your current card, and you'll find that you can eliminate a lot of interest, making it easier to tackle your debt, especially as a small business owner. If you're able to get that 0% interest offer, take advantage of it. Also, you might want to consider in some areas leasing versus owning. With rates being so low, it actually can be cheaper long-term to lease. Pay for what you need instead of unnecessarily tying up your cash into long-term investments, especially being that we really don't know how much of an impact not only the pandemic is going to cause, but also what's the financial situation going to be post-pandemic, meaning we still have a debt that we have to focus on, and we have possibly changing administration. And if you look at Congress, who knows what Congress is going to do? So it's kind of smart to really take that into consideration. If you guys have owned properties, I would really suggest to you guys take a hard look at what unused space that you have and consider leasing it. You can find out that could be a money-making opportunity for you, especially if you own a building. Part two of the phase of rethinking this is rethink your approach. This, number 6, generate client referrals, is probably, it's talked about a lot, but it has the least follow-up action items behind it. You will be surprised how many owners or salespersons have so many clients that they fail to ask them for referrals. I hear a lot about different business owners just not asking for a referral. One of the best ways to grow your business is to really ask for the referral. You'd be surprised at how many owners have loyal customers but fail to get their opinion or even ask for referrals. Implement secure protocols for document signings and retention. And attorneys can speak to this highly. DocuSign, Adobe, etc. Make it easier for the client in terms of exercising those documents, those sensitive documents that you're working with your consumers. Point 8, implement automation. I cannot stress this enough. Automation and other technologies can completely reduce the time that you're spending at a fraction of the costs. Whether it's using pay services like PayPal or Apple Pay, or looking at digital marketing campaigns. I use Schedule Once. There's several apps out there that can automate your tasks, your daily tasks, making life a lot more simpler and easier to improve your overall ability to stay in front of the game. And it also can assist with any collecting bills and payments. If you make the process easier, you can actually find that you're getting paid a lot faster than trying to track down a person to write that check. Number 9, stop ineffective marketing techniques. Unfortunately, because the small business owner has had to reinvent themselves, marketing use and research has skyrocketed. However, it's important to really track the effectiveness of your marketing. Use Google Analytics, use Facebook Analytics. That data that's inside of the marketing techniques can really help you understand how to market to your consumer. You want to keep what works and release what doesn't. And number 10 is going to be a long one, and I'll try to be really quick at it. You want to start your effective marketing. Now you've done away with your ineffective marketing, start looking at your effective marketing techniques. COVID has made it very clear that the internet is going to be the primary source of marketing. According to Forbes, 62% of businesses say that they've experienced a decline in revenue since March. So what does that mean? That means that 79% of Americans have social media profiles. Are you going after that audience? To market to them, you have to realize that you have to start thinking like the consumer. Some changes you may want to consider if you haven't done so already. Engage more with your customers. Show them that you care and appreciate their support by offering special deals, discounts, etc. That's one thing. However, you also want to do what I think is very important. Use more purpose-driven marketing as opposed to business-driven or company-driven marketing, meaning less about you and more about them. How are you connecting to your audience? It can't be a song about me, but more so about, okay, what can I do to help you? Upgrade your website and social media presence, especially SEO, which is basically search engine optimization. And also what's not really talked about a lot is called backlinking. That's when you take your profile or your company and you link it to a more reputable source. Let's say if you are, for example, I'll pick on you, Marilyn. Let's say Marilyn speaks, she has a speaking engagement and she spoke at the Rockville Business Center. Well, if the Rockville Business Center has a large following, why wouldn't Marilyn then link her profile to that? Let's say they had a recording of the speech where they recorded Marilyn speaking. Why wouldn't she link her profile to that site so that now we already know that Rockville Business Center may get a lot of foot traffic, but now Marilyn can partake in that foot traffic just by linking her profile to that entity, whether it be a large company or whether it be a organization. Try to link yourself to a bigger organization so that your website can get more social presence. Another thing, don't just post. It's great to post. I commend you for that. But you also want to comment on your followers' postings. They want attention too. If you don't post on their postings, how can you expect them to post on your postings? So you have to basically scratch my back, I scratch yours. Story brand. Another important one. There's nothing more captivating than telling a good story. Tie your business with a story that your followers can resonate with. Upgrade your online securities and pay attention to traffic. So those are some of the things that I would strongly suggest that you guys look at, which can help you in going into the fourth quarter to drive up your business. Restaurants, we could get into that, but I'll hold that for a later thought. But Randy, if you have any comments, I'm going to open this to the floor because I think this could be a really great advantageous point for individuals to start thinking about.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. Let's open it up to maybe you could stop sharing, Brian, and let's open it up to the floor to see what questions people might have. Let's try to get some of your questions answered. Very good.
I'll start with a question. So as I said, I actually started my budget, my next year's budget last night. And so from the perspective of the uncertainty, first off, I don't know how 2020 is going to end up. We're still in the process of trying to figure out how this pandemic, how the shutdown has impacted. As you all know, my business, my small business is running the chamber. And we, just like all businesses, we have revenue, we have expenses. During the pandemic, our expenses we've done what Brian has suggested. We've tightened our belt. We've scrubbed everything we could possibly scrub, but most of our expenses are fixed. We have staff and we have an office. I still don't know what 2020 is going to bring. And I'm just really having difficulty looking at the revenue scenarios for 2021. I mean, what advice might you give us to help figure that out?
So
I have some thought, but Shay, I wanted to open up to you first.
Yeah.
Shay.
So one thing that crossed my mind is, obviously you're a membership-driven organization, and I assume that's where the bulk of your revenue comes from, right? So, I think there's a lot of uncertainties for a lot of people, and so, for every year I think about, okay, which memberships do I want to continue? Which ones do I feel, the membership costs are justified? Maybe it's sending out some kind of survey just to the membership to get a sense of, are you likely to renew? If you aren't, what's keeping you, is it their business, or is it they just don't feel that the need that what the chamber offers meets their business need? But it might give you at least just a little bit of perspective and insight that can be generic, sort of anonymous enough, but give you something to work with. So just a thought.
Thank you. That's interesting. Thanks.
Another thing, being that you are membership driven, what I like to talk about is the rebates or the connecting thing. Most businesses, when you think about it, when a person joins or when a small business owner joins a organization, really they're joining it initially from the standpoint of how can I use this outlet to increase the exposure and visibility of my business. So one of the things that I possibly would do is try to incentivize the members to bring on additional members by allowing that business owner more speaking time in front of different businesses. Because unfortunately, people like to talk about themselves. Just look at me talking right now. Normally in front of, to be quite honest, everybody that knows that when I host Soho virtually, I'm not really dressed in a suit and tie, but at the same token, I do like to talk about what iPlan does. And that's any business owner. But at the same token, you want to make sure that that individual not only can relate to the listener, meaning don't just talk about your business all the time, but what else can you do outside of the business venue that will keep the listener's attention? So Talking Time is actually a great vehicle, a platform for other businesses to utilize to talk about their business and what they can do to help.
Yeah, so maybe to that point, is the membership offering, how will the membership offering be different under the current circumstances? Are there new ways to provide value that we can't get from like the traditional model of networking events and things like that? You know, is there something different in place of that?
Yeah, another thought I was going to share with you, Marilyn, another association that I'm involved in the leadership of, we're doing 3 different budgets for next year. We're doing a return to normal budget. We're doing, half virtual meetings, half old-fashioned meetings, and then maybe a doomsday budget, if we lost 25% of our members. So going into 2021, we're going to have at least some preliminary work on what direction we might go, and then we have the numbers prepared for when we know we have to go that way.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks, Randy. So to Shay's point about how are our offerings different, I think we need to make sure our members know that. And then we also, as we say, there's so much more to the chamber than the meetings, and so we need to do that. And one last point, and I'll mute myself, is one of Bryan's points, top 10 points, was asking for referrals. So I am officially asking each one of you for referrals.
I love it.
Chelsea's happy.
Chelsea and I were texting back and forth when you said that, Bryan. So please, if you have anybody that could use the chamber, please make sure you send them our way. Thank you.
Now more than ever, the chamber can help you as a business. I think both Anita and Hope had your hands up. Hope, go ahead. Unmute yourself. Or Laura, do you have to unmute her?
Yes, thank you.
There you go.
Okay, well, hello everyone, and good to see you all happy and healthy. So, I really like, Bryan, your point about talking about marketing. Many people do sales, but it's not about what you want. It's really understanding what your client wants and what the prospect needs. And I've learned that over my 21 years of building my Legal Shield business. I made all the mistakes in the beginning, as we all do, and really became successful as soon as I understood that it's not about me. It is really about what your client, your prospect needs. And so once you turn it around, it is going to open many, many doors to you. Like, we do get kind referrals every month from people because we bend over backward to help people. We're semi-retired now, we are debt-free, okay? We're very grateful to still build our business. We donate to the Maryland Food Bank, we donate to Doctors Without Borders. We try to help everybody because the situation is dramatic for everyone, and we do feel for everyone, but people do feel that you care. And once you give we give referral to people. We try to invite people to networking event, to Zoom, try to send to Laura, as many people as I can, but when you do that, it's a two-way street. And I really like the way you explain it because it really takes the load of you. It's like, no, it's not about me, it's about the other person, and things will come along. But it has to be this, how can I say, this wholesome kind of relationship. And I really believe that this is something that we also need right now because the situation is so stressful, 200,000 deaths. And it keeps on growing with COVID-19. And so we really need to, to be there for each other. And thank you so much, Bryan. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Anita? Unmute. Yep.
I don't really have a question as much as I have a comment. I want to thank you for the things that you've said and my takeaways, because my organization is very unique in that while we run leadership programs for middle schoolers and high schoolers, the bulk of our revenue comes from summer camps. Mm-hmm. So that's not till July, and I have to start my budget next month. And I don't even know what I'm budgeting for. So I think what I'm going to take away from this are asking the larger questions, first of all, what's in my control? We use college campuses. Well, what's not in my control is whether or not they're going to be open. So I need to really focus on what I can control, and I think make a timeline for the decisions that need to be made based on what I can't control. And then I think the biggest challenge is going to be figuring out when to pull the trigger, because at some point we're going to have to decide how to move forward, and we don't know what July is going to look like, but at some point well before July, I'm going to have to pull the trigger. And so, I think what you have given us today will hopefully give me the confidence to make the decision when I need to, and then just march forward from there. So thank you for both the big picture from Shay and some of the more tactical steps from Bryan.
Very good. Appreciate the feedback. Who else might have something to either ask a question about or perhaps add to the discussion? I would love to hear any anecdotes from any of you on this call of something that really worked well for you in the last 6 months, something you were proud of yourself, and go ahead and be proud and express it as something of maybe the way you adjusted, pivoted, or handled this situation in the last 5 or 6 months. I'd love to hear one of those stories from one of our attendees rather than from me, Bryan, or Shay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's vital, actually, to piggyback on that, Randy. I think it's vital that we actually do hear the success stories, because that actually gives that other business that's trying to plan out, as Anita just pointing to, what are some of the success stories that have been practiced that have actually worked for other business owners. Sharing that story can help another business owner prosper going forward.
So I'm going to call on Bruce, because Bruce has a really interesting snapshot of working with, he's been riding this pandemic in terms of businesses, offices closing, starting to reopen, and how it's affected your business, Bruce.
Well, thank you. Negatively is the answer. Yeah, just for the record, of those of you keeping notes, if there's any reporters, I'm anti-pandemic.
Okay, good.
I think you have some followers with you.
So what I did, first of all, like everyone else, I cried at the beginning and said, oh, this is terrible, and everything was shut down, and what are we going to do? And we all just went along for the ride. And what I have found still to this day is at least 25% of my clients, and I have about 165 people that I see regularly by going to their businesses on a weekly, semi-weekly, et cetera basis. It does not include people who call me who need something, like, I've been to Bryan's house and was able to help him, but I'm talking about regular business clients. About 25% of them are still either closed or with very limited staffing. And those 25%, let's call them, are not, in my opinion, coming back to the office in the near term. And by near term, I mean at least until, I would think, next July, and it could be later. So that is the thought that I have to have every day to motivate myself going out there. If not, I fall into the malaise of missing the 25%. I have to look at the 75% that are there, although I was just complaining today that of the people that are back, they're not using the same amount of consumable product that I sell like they did before. Again, you can't cry about it. You just got to put your big boy and big girl pants on and concentrate on serving the customers that are there. But as I say, Marilyn, to answer your question, in my case, I don't see the people coming back, and you just got to be super serving of the people that are there. And I've said this before, I think I said this on Soho, you got to dance with the one who brought you, is the old expression. If super customer service and being available to help people is what has set you apart for the last 11 years, in my case, of being able to help people. You got to continue to do that. And this is not, in my opinion, it's not necessarily the time to throw out what got you here, but to reinforce doing what you did do to get here.
100% agree.
Thank you.
Bruce, I'm curious, given, and Bryan touched on this too, you know, the business landscape or how consumers access products and services moving forward is going to be different. And obviously certain industries are influenced differently. Do you have a particular sectors of business that you work in, and could you sort of refocus on ones that do go back and, you know, I'm making up things, but hospitals or doctor's offices or places that are still serving in maybe that's a different industry than you used to be in, and bring your excellent service to someone new?
That's a good question. In my case, people used to ask me about, and I'll answer your question by going back. People used to always ask me, and still do, you know, it's particularly in June. Is June a good month for you? Is December a good month for you? Or somebody has a terrible August all the time. How's August for you? And I have found that in my history of doing this, there is no seasonality to my business. One month is just as good as the next month. Notice I went with the positive, talking about one month being just as good as the next month, not one month being just as bad. And it's the same way with industry. No, there is no industry that I can tell you is better or worse. Although I could go back and say some of the white collar businesses, the insurance, the accounting, they have figured out the way to do what they're doing from home and be just as productive for their clients. Likewise, you'd say doctor's offices should be good. I have one small doctor's office that went away. She retired. Decided this was a good time to retire. So, Shay, to answer your question, there is no industry that's better or worse. But I am trying to serve people how they want to be served, not the way I want to serve them. I like going around in my little truck, but if I have to send drop ship to people's homes, I'm doing a lot more drop shipping to people's homes. So thankfully, I was, you know, in serving the customers in their office as well. Now I'm able to serve them when they're at home.
Bruce, I was just thinking a target market for you might be anyone age 60 or older, because I print anything I'm going to read.
I do too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Hope, did you have your hand up again? Yes.
Yes, Randy. Well, actually, I like what Bruce just said. You know, I definitely agree that life is a process, and that there is no industry that is better than you know, anyone. We all have ups and downs. You know, it's a cycle. You know, things go like that, even in life. Marilyn, who meditates, understands impermanence. Marilyn, you know what I'm talking about, okay? But definitely, you know, I really believe that there's a mindset that makes it that either people are successful or unsuccessful. There are more conditioning, of course, but I think that if we have a shift in our thinking, we can make it much more positive in any situation. And one thing that my husband and I, we've been doing every morning, every evening, of course, we do a lot of meditation. We also practice gratitude. And especially in the midst of the pandemic, we've been so grateful for everything, for our health, our food, being able to wash our hands, even if it is 30 times a day, you know, being grateful that we have to be so careful because we're older and we are high-risk people, but being grateful to be alive. And I think that this is something that has really allowed us to have, well, you know, I believe in attracting, you know, the law of attraction, and you bring about what you think about. And so you know, when we went to buy some food at Trader Joe's or Aldi, we were so grateful that we had all this healthy food, because at some point we could not even find noodles, you know, or pasta. So just being able to find the food that we needed. And so we felt, okay, you know, let's give back, you know, and now we are very grateful to be able to donate to the Maryland Food Bank, just because there are millions of people who need, you know, that. So I think that when we have this shift in thinking, as Bruce said, it's like focusing not on the problem, but on the solution. I was so gung-ho in meeting people face-to-face, never wanted to do Zoom. And I was like, I love Zoom. I'm not gonna drive anymore, you know, I love to stay at home. It's like, I'm so happy, no traffic jam, you know. And so I think that we can really try to make the best of it. And of course, without minimizing that everybody is going through a hard time, and you know, helping each other, not be unrealistic, but still keep very, very positive and be grateful. And I think that's gonna get us out of this big hole together. Yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Laura?
Two things. Brian, the Soho marketing list that you had, could you send that to me so I could share that with the group when I send out the video? And then Catherine, are you still there? I would be interested to hear how it's affected your business, being in events.
Yeah, so all of my weddings and events for 2020 were postponed to 2021. And I actually booked 2 weddings, one in November, one in December. And I actually have a small business event coming up in October. So I've been doing okay, thankfully. I'm very grateful for that. Slowly starting to get back into in-person events. I'm still a little bit like about it, but have been doing as many networking events as I possibly can with being at home and all the Zooms and everything. So I am starting to get a little bit of pick up on like some of my small business side. So I do event planning for small businesses. So I have a small business virtual launch that I'm doing and working with a couple other small businesses, hopefully. And I have 2 photo shoots that I'm planning. So I've been busy, thankfully. In the beginning of the pandemic, I did a lot of like back end stuff. So like trying to get my financial stability, I guess, and making sure that like from the client's perspective, like my QuickBooks and like all that kind of stuff is like smooth and not as like choppy. And so things are a little bit better. I did, like Brian was recommending, automations and setting up my automatic response emails and getting all of that stuff set up. So I've been busy. Super thankful for all that you guys are doing at the Chamber. I know I've been kind of like here and there popping in and not as consistent with all the events that you have going on, but I am still supporting and still trying to be as available as I possibly can while working full-time and running my business.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. No, thank you. I'm really glad that things are good for you. So
yeah.
I saw your videos, so that you know, the recent one that you did with pinstripes. So that was really cool. But yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm glad. So good.
Yeah,
that's
me
a good
too.
sign that, you know, in-person events are picking up. So
yeah, I mean, it's hard because, you know, DC, Maryland, Virginia, like they're all in different stages. You know, Maryland is technically in stage 3, but Montgomery County is still in 2 and Virginia's in 3, I think. Like everybody's all over the place. So I'm really going by like what the venues are recommending. So some are at like 50 people, some are at 50% capacity, depending on, like my wedding in November is at a church, but they have a huge church. And so they can block off like every other row. And so like a wedding for 70 people would be okay in a space that holds like 300, 400, 500 people. So it just depends on, you know, I would say what you're comfortable with, and what other people are comfortable with, and respecting people's boundaries. I know it's a very hard time that we're in, and it's like something that is new for all of us. And so I think it's good to respect everyone's boundaries. Like I wasn't 100% comfortable going out in public, but now it's like, okay, if it's outside or if I'm wearing my mask, you know, I'm a little bit more comfortable, so.
Thank you, Catherine. We have to wrap up soon, but I think I saw your hand up, Bruce.
Oh, I just wanted to thank everybody. But you know, as chair of the chamber, this has been an interesting year. But look at this program that we've done today, and it's really been excellent. Randy and Shay and Bryan, and I'm not to steal Marilyn's thunder when she does the wrap up, but the idea that we have these three so knowledgeable members of the Gaithersburg-Germantown Chamber of Commerce who can lead us and guide us through this this mess that none of us anticipated was going on. And I think it really shows that the chamber has got people in our ranks that can help us. And for those of us who sell transactionally, we have the stuff you need. And for those of you who provide a service, we can be of service to each other. And I think that we should be really proud of the chamber for being able to have such strong members who can lead this kind of program.
Thank you. For those of you that hopefully you have a few more minutes, Bryan wanted to share one more slide. Go ahead if you can, Bryan.
Oh, sure. This right quick, I'll get out of your hair, but this is something, and Bruce, you may remember this from Soho, but this is something that we actually shared to some of the business owners at at a prior small office, home office business. And I'm skipping the first portion of it to just really jump into the nitty gritty of it. Right now with COVID being an issue and business owners having concern, more than ever, and this is really strengthening what Shay said earlier, depending on your sector of business, you may want to start looking at your personal investments and also your business to make sure that your business has a low correlation to your personal investments. I can't stress that enough because you will be overweighted in that position. So let's say if something happens in your field and God forbid you have to sell your business, well, you can almost really know that the same thing could be happening to your own personal portfolio. So please make sure that you're not overweighted, if you will, in that sector. Also, another thing that you may want to consider is if you are at that point where you're pulling out your hair regarding your business and you have to shut your doors. God forbid, we don't want that to happen. But if you do, one of the things that I highly recommend to do now, planning is so important, try to find out who your competitor is. And by doing that, you can avoid a fire sale because your competitor may be interested in buying your book of business.
Oh, we lost.
Oh, you lost me?
Wait, you go in and out, but go ahead.
What I was saying is you may want to consider aligning yourself with a competitor or finding out who your competitor is, and to avoid a fire sale. The worst thing that you don't want a fire sale if you're looking to sell your business.
Is this a list that perhaps Laura could share with the attendees?
Absolutely.
With your
Absolutely.
permission, Bryan?
Absolutely.
You could get that to Laura and she could share it? Very good.
Yeah, and there's a lot on that list, which are sort of touching on the topics that I referenced to. So it's a really great resource.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, we're going to stick to schedule and wrap up now. I too want to thank Shay and Bryan for their work on this. They worked very hard on this. They really prepared, spent a lot of time to make this a good value deliverable for you, as it's going to be some things that will be delivered after this call as well. So thank you in my upper left-hand corner, Shay. Thank you in my upper right-hand corner to Bryan. And Marilyn, did you want to close with anything?
Bruce said it beautifully.
Very good. Thank you all. Stay well, stay safe, and keep sharing with each other. Keep sharing and keep that attitude of gratitude.
That's
Awesome.
Right.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Go out and enjoy this beautiful day.
Yeah.